Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. I am Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, Reed. Hey, everybody. Great to be here. Great to be talking comics. And today we are going to be talking about Mike's long awaited re entry into the world of X-Men.
X-Men, yeah.
You
No,
guys know I'm a fan, but you know I haven't read the comics in a long time. I've been checked out for like at least two or three major story arcs that have happened in the last 5 or 10 years. But I have a special place in my heart for X-Men. Me and Jackson are my son. We're going through and watching the old 90s X-Men cartoons, and we're looking forward to watching X-Men 97. And so when Reed and I reviewed the launch of the whole line the other day, I started thinking, like, I'm always looking for a jumping on point for X-Men because I want to get back into it. And so this was going to be the jumping on point for me. And Reed said, give it a try, Mike. So I gave it a try. And I got the first issue here and I read it today. Reed, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting is we kind of looked at what they have, like 12 books launching. We looked at about three or four of them, and we talked about how we'll probably try the jumping on points for probably both of this one and Uncanny X-Men, and then certainly I'll always be buying Wolverine, and I think we thought we'd try X Factor as well. But so this was the first one. This is the whole line launching off of this one. Um, I think overall, I checked out of X-Men 2 years ago after reading it basically in my entire life. Um, I think for a first issue, I think it was okay. I think certainly the art was great from Ryan Stegman, and
Oh
I
my
think that
gosh,
was
it was the art was
the
really
highlight
good.
for me. Um, I thought, just even smaller shots like that right there. Yeah,
Look
you're
at the
kind of
shot of
showing there.
Juggernaut jumping
Yeah,
in.
no, he did really cool. I think Ryan Stegman, he's been with Marvel a while. I think he was on a Wolverine book. I want to say he was on Wolverine in like 2014, 2015.
Look,
Um,
look at this page. I
yeah,
really
he's done a lot of really he was I know Venom was really the run that kind of made him blow up. I know he was on Wolverine before that, and he's one of the better artists that Marvel has going right now. I think what he does really well, I think in this issue is the action sequences. He does a really good job of drawing those, making them look dynamic. And I think they're perfect for a superhero comic book, right? He wouldn't be the greatest artist for something like Thor or Conan or a more serious kind of thing, but for a more dynamic, colorful comic book adventure, I think he does a really, really good job of those kind of action scenes. I think he used good shadow and stuff like that at times too. And like the character like Magneto, there's a cool shot of him. He kind of has his face in shadow and stuff like that. And I thought the way he kind of drew him, granted, I'm not a huge fan of the Magneto wearing like a cashmere sweater looking thing, but I think the overall way that he did the lighting and stuff like that, I think looked kind of cool. So I think the art, I would give an A on it. I think Stegman did a good job. I really do like Jed McKay. I think his Moon Knight has been excellent. And that's been one of my favorite runs of the past couple of years. I think his writing was good. I think I really liked Cyclops in this book. I think he acted more like Cyclops has in a long time. And that was really what made me kind of stop reading X-Men is I never really felt like Wolverine was treated poorly in Krakoa outside of a few instances. The characters that I liked, like Cyclops and Beast and Nightcrawler and folks like that, those are the ones who I thought really got hurt the most during the Krakoa time. And so it was cool to read a book where Beast acted like Beast again, Cyclops acted like Cyclops again. It was cool to see those characters look resembling what they should be. It was almost like seeing old friends again, kind of thing, where it was like, okay, this is cool to see these characters there.
and for a
I think
checked
the
out fan
standouts of the
like
book for
me,
me.
for a checked
Mhm.
out fan like me, it was cool to see those characters in a familiar, in a familiar way. Like Logan seemed like
And
Logan,
yeah,
Cyclops seemed like Cyclops, Beast seemed like the same old Beast, and there was one other one, Juggernaut. They were familiar
yeah.
characters for me, and so I was really looking forward to a comic with some familiar characters that I could jump back into the X verse.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that they did well. It was the standout part of this was I think the characters like Juggernaut and Magic and Psylocke, because kind of Psylocke got into this convoluted thing the last 4 or 5 years where it used to be Betsy Braddock, and then she was inhabiting the body of this Japanese like assassin, and then they decided they couldn't do that anymore, and said Rockham. I liked the approach they took because basically this character is Psylocke. Forget all that past stuff. She's going to have the power, the attitude, and everything. And I think that's a really smart move. And I give Jed McKay a lot of credit for that. And that I think he had a hard job, and that there's been, you've got to kind of transition the Krakoa fans who are still there, but get back the fans that you lost. And I think he kind of hit a good medium between. I think there was enough mention of the stuff that had happened before that if you were a fan reading those, it wasn't just I'm going to drop it and pretend it never happened. And that I think I don't want to be hypocritical in that I absolutely hate when writers come in and they ignore the previous 12 to 15 to 20 issues or whatever. And Krakoa, for good or bad, was a huge part of X-Men. And so while I want a relaunch and I want a fresh starting point, I do like that there was at least some acknowledgement of that, of ending, where if you were a fan and someone who was reading that before, it doesn't feel like they're just like, nope, we're pretending that never happened. Even if me as a fan hated it, would probably prefer that. I do like that for the fans who are reading, they were like, hey, here's something, this did happen. It's
It
building
takes
off of
a
that. And they didn't just ignore that.
it takes a good writer to I mean, the easy thing to do was be like, let's put my head in the sand, pretend none of that happened, and let me just start from scratch. And you see that a lot in comics, but um, like you said, I mean, the X-Men fans are a huge audience for Marvel, and for better or worse, they drug them through a couple of big story arcs that I was checked out of, and to at least tap into that and acknowledge that and try and rebuild, it had to have been a tough job. But
Yeah.
this is the first issue of the end result of a new project. So
Yeah, I think, overall, a couple things I think that were highlights, and then we'll talk a little bit of nitpicks and some things that we didn't like as much. I do like the Alaska setting. I think that's cool. I think it ties into a lot of Cyclops history. I think that's cool to see that. I think kind of the winter-esque looking location and all that. I think it's a perfect kind of comic book based sort of thing. And so I think it's kind of cool that they went back there. I thought that was kind of a standout portion of it. I like they're in an old Sentinel factory. I thought that was a cool
that
kind of
was kind of
twist.
cool. I liked
And I thought
that.
the Jed McKay portion of it being that, the hint of the X-Men have saved this town in Alaska before from something. But then those people also were assembling Sentinels and lost their job. And so I think it kind of sets up a cool tension with the X-Men and the community, which I think is an absolutely essential piece of X-Men. I don't know if that's the perfect way to do it, but I much prefer that compared to what they were doing with Krakoa, where there will understandably be some human resistance to them, but they also saved them. So I think you kind of get that perfect sort of balance that's in there. Um, I think the roster, I think this is where I can kind of get into a little bit of the nitpicking. So I think good action, pretty good character moments, great to see some of the characters back. I thought Logan, pretty cool cameo for Logan. Basically
Yeah,
says, hey, after he finishes a little mission, I'm just going back to the forest.
yeah,
Which
that
really
really,
fits
I
really fits
recognize
Logan
that.
well.
Yeah,
Um, and I think we've seen the preview for his book coming up, so that largely seems like that'll tie into it. Although I wonder if he's in the wilderness, why is he also in Uncanny X-Men? But I guess we'll just chalk that up to kind of like how Batman every month
maybe
is
he
doing
stopped
27
off.
different things.
Maybe he
Um,
stopped off on the way to Canada, and
to,
then
to
he got
made
mixed
his
up in
way
a
from
new
Alaska
adventure.
to New Orleans on the way to Canada. Maybe Logan has no sense of direction or something like that. But
He lost
I
his compass.
Yeah, I think overall though, I think that was some cool character moments. I would say I think the action was really good in the comic book for what it is, especially for modern Marvel. I think the way Stegman did that, so I think there were some great things. Some things that didn't really work for me, and I think this would probably be, I would imagine similar for you. Um, Kid Omega and Temper being on the team. I don't mind Temper as much. I think she kind of they showed her using like ice slides and stuff like that with her powers. So I think she's like fire and ice kind of dynamic. Um, it's an interesting character. I understand why you want to put newer characters into it. I will say though, the ice slides and stuff like that. When I saw the ice slide, I'm like, wouldn't it have been easier to just use Iceman?
Yeah,
But I suppose Iceman's had a lot of baggage in the last couple of years, and they put him through the ringer on some stories and stuff like that. And so she might be a little easier entry point for it. Kid Omega to me was the part that just makes this book. He's a relic from Grant Morrison's time. I've never really understood that character. He drove me crazy every time he was on the page. I was just like, why are you here? And I think that's the thing with this X-Men books is I understand they want to put new characters in and they want to try to develop some of these characters. But if you're going to have so many books like NYX and X Factor and all these different books, I would store those characters there. That's the big problem I have is with the X-Men book. I don't need Kid Omega or Temper. Like that role would have been so much better, in my opinion, with Storm in it, or
it almost
Colossus, or Domino, or someone we know.
it almost feels like they when they broke apart this new launch and they kind of spread the A-list characters around a little bit, and then they sprinkled
Hmm.
in some of the other characters in this book. We'll sprinkle a few over here. But I would
Yeah.
tell you, there, being an old X-Men fan who has got X-Men comics in probably more than 10 years, who haven't read anything, um, there were a couple of places in this one little small issue where I was like, man, this would be a great place for Storm to show up, or she would be awesome on this mission, or where's Jean Grey? Where is she? Like someone who hasn't been involved in X-Men. Those are kind of the things that were kind of going through my
It
mind
goes
as
through
I
your
read
mind.
it.
No, it's so weird in that, I think I fully understand trying to develop new characters, but I think the thing with American comic books right now, and I see this with Justice League when that book is running and with some of the other books that are going, you need to play the hits right now for a lot of people. And
Right,
the thing is,
right.
I get it. Kid Omega, I'm sure he has fans. I'm sure Temper has fans. But I just look at this thing and it's kind of, and I compare it to like a Supreme pizza kind of thing. There's so many good things on there, and there's always like one or two ingredients that these places put on. You're like, why? Why would you put that on the pizza? And
Why
that's the
did
same
why'd
thing
you
as
put
like,
the anchovies? Why'd you put the
yeah,
anchovies on there?
anchovies or some onions or something. It's like, the thing is, if you had taken Temper and Kid Omega out and just substituted in Emma Frost or Colossus
Or
or
Colossus.
Sheen or Iceman or
Right.
any of these other characters that we have attachment to, it would have made the lineup perfect. I think that's the thing is the X-Men, the key thing that always works for X-Men is the team dynamics. It's interesting because it's not like the Justice League where it was a bunch of individual creations who were put together as a team. This was a team that was created with the individuals who all kind of fit in that role. And largely that's why we see that really only Logan has success on his own as a comic book character. Everybody else really works well within the pages of their own, within a team. And that's the thing is like, I was just reading the book and it's like, I thought it was good, but I'm like, man, the team dynamics of like Colossus working with his sister and Juggernaut being there and the rivalry that those two kind of had and
Yeah.
how that could have worked, or Storm kind of seeing this new approach and how would she
Yeah.
react to Magneto and stuff like that. I think that would be just a lot more interesting. And it's not bad. I'm not going to sit here and say that it ruined the book for me, but I will say I would very much like you. I sat there, even though I know who these characters are and seen them for years. I still read it and it's like, why? Like, why is that character there when you could have substituted in some of these other characters? And so I think overall, I think it was a really good issue. I think what this is going to be symptomatic of for a lot of X-Men. Like you mentioned, there's some things that you were reading in this that kind of take you by surprise. You're like, I don't really know
Right.
what's going on and things
What's
like that.
Magneto doing in there, and why
Yeah.
is he an ally, but he's also adversarial? I'm not sure. I'm hoping to find
Yeah, I
out in
think
future
that's
issues.
the problem they're going to have. And we mentioned, like, I appreciate Jed McKay calling out the Krakoa stuff and bringing it in because even though I wasn't a fan, I don't like when anybody leaves the fans who have been reading behind. I
Right.
think the hard problem they're going to have is the Krakoa era. I think did a lot of damage to X-Men. I think it damaged a lot of the way that people see the characters, and I think even in this storyline, you can notice the Beast in this comic is not the Beast that was in Krakoa because that one went psychopathic and turned into like a megalomaniac killer, and so they
I
like
can't even
reset
believe
him as
that.
a clone with his personality from his time with the Avengers in the 80s and 70s and stuff. And again, it's great to see Beast back, but like he'll make comments in the book like, "Oh, I don't really remember Krakoa," and it's like for a new fan, they're gonna be like, "That's kind of weird. What is that? Why didn't he remember it?" Right?
Right.
Psylocke's another one, right? This used to be Betsy Braddock. If you're a fan from the 90s of the Claremont and the Jim Lee era, you're going to read and go like, why are they not calling her that? Oh, well, because they split into two different entities. And, that's a different thing. And it's just, I think it's a weird thing that X-Men's going to have to grapple with is the storylines that they've done in the past 10, 15 years. They've put a lot of pieces on the board that just are very hard to take back. It's the toothpaste back in the tube kind of thing. And I think it's a tough job for Jed McKay and all these writers who are coming in, because you largely have to reorganize the brand to get it back on track while honoring what was there, while not completely. It's a lot. It's steering a ship into some stormy waters. It'll be
It's a
interesting to
tall
see what they
order.
could do.
It's got to
Uh,
be a tall order, right?
but yeah, I think overall for me, if I had to assign this a letter grade kind of thing, I wouldn't know, Mike. I'd probably be like B plus. I think it was a good enough issue. I certainly will pick up issue 2, which is all I really wanted to see out of the book. Is it good enough that it gets me going? Man, I feel like reading this more. Because I'll
Yeah.
be honest, reading X-Men, 2 or 3 years ago when I dropped the book, I was like, yeah, man, I don't ever need to read this storyline again. And so I think at the very least it sets some pieces on the chessboard a bit, where I'm like, okay, it's not a perfect comic, not something I'd be like, oh my gosh, you've got to read it, but a good enough entry point where I'm certainly back in picking up the next couple issues. How about you? How about for you?
I'm interested enough to take it to another issue or two. Yeah, I think I'm gonna like Uncanny X-Men better, I think.
Yeah, I think that's I think we said we were going to try 3 or 4 of them. I think Uncanny X-Men's probably the one we're most. I'm hopeful for Wolverine. I know for Uncanny X-Men, if you want the dynamics, that probably is going to be our best bet. But it'll be interesting. We'll try 3 or 4 of these. I think overall, good entry point. I give them a lot of credit for having to tackle a really difficult task. And that one of the things that I'll say is, I've seen some criticism of the issue and some not. I think the hard part is, and I'm granted, I'm not a writer at all, but if they came to me and were like, hey, Reed, what idea would you have to fix the X-Men from the last couple of years?
Yeah,
The hard part for me would be I would have just been like, let's just completely reset it. But that doesn't work in comic books because, again, one of the things I always complain about is, let's honor what happened before. I think another thing,
right.
you pointed this out to me and you said it. You said you saw the right team on the cover of this comic book. It was just on
Yeah,
the wrong side of the cover.
it was on the wrong side of the cover. Look, there's all your characters right there. Look, it's like that's the team. That I mean, ultimately, I understand. X-Men is huge, and there's so many mutants and so many story potentials and possibilities. But for a jumping on point for an old fan who really wants something new, this is the team that I would hope and dream. That's the dream team right there, and they have their own TV show. You could tie it in perfectly. Hey, wait a minute! What an idea! Wait, stop the presses.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is it's well, and you and I will probably have to get around to doing a video about X-Men '97 once you guys. I know you and Jax are working your way through all the older seasons and
Right,
stuff. So once you guys finish, we'll have to do a video on it. And I think X-Men '97 was good. There's 1 or 2 aspects that really really bugged me, but yeah, it's like you said, it's staring them right in the face. Like this,
right.
this is the lineup. This
This
is
is the key
this
to
is
the
what people want to
success
see.
of the
Uh,
X-Men line.
yeah.
They didn't skimp on the animation production. They didn't take chances with like some third or fourth tier mutants. They put all the stars there because you got to bring the star power to get that audience. And ultimately, that's what an old X-Men fan like me is looking for in a jumping on point. But
Yeah. I think for an attempt at a jumping on point, I think it was a pretty good start. We'll see where it goes. I don't envy the folks in charge of the X-Men right now because I think they have just an absolute beast of a thing in front of them in terms of how many characters, the different types of fans that are out there,
super
honoring
kudos to
the fans
McKay
that were
for
there.
tackling
Yeah,
it.
I think overall, as good as you're going to get tackling the baggage, and you and I always talk about this on this channel. We want to be positive, and I think it's so easy for me as a lapsed X-Men fan who used to love this book so much. It would be so easy to just go on this, nope, Krakoa killed it, it's dead forever, I hate it, forget the
Yeah.
X-Men. Because it's so easy to buy into that anger on it. And what I do like of this is, though, while it's not perfect, it was closer to what it should be. And I always want to recognize progress where I see it. Again, if it falls off the cliff, I'll, call that out when that happens. But I think the thing is, when you see someone taking steps and putting things back in place to where you feel like, man, this is good, even if it's not perfect, I will say steps in the right direction is certainly what this title needed, what this line of books needed. And if this is an indication of the start, I'm a lot more optimistic about X-Men with this book than I am with what was going on 5 months ago, 4 months ago, that kind of stuff. And that again, I think it's just so easy, especially in today's day and age where the internet has everything everywhere and you can find all the negativity in the world that you want. I think it's so easy to pick it apart with a fine tooth comb because you're mad at it. And like, I'll be honest, for me, it was tough to get back in because there was a part of me going, man, like the X-Men made me so just checked
Right.
out. I dropped it off my list that I wanted. I was just like, I'm done with this. And to get back in, there's so many pieces of me that could sit there and go, I hate this. I hate this. But it's not there. Right. None of that is this writer. None of that is his fault. He's got to do what he's got to do to transition the thing from one thing to another. And I think if you remove the baggage of the last couple of years and just go, let's try to start this from where it is. I think this is a really solid point. That was what I really sat down and looked at is when I first read it, I was like, I didn't really like it. I reread it again and I'm like, okay, remove Krakoa, act like that didn't happen. If this is, let's go back to 2019 and make this just an issue of X-Men that's on the stand, I would have liked it. And so I'm like, you know what? That's where I'm going to give it another chance. And I think it's a step in the right direction. Be
That's what
interested to
I'm
know if
doing.
that's where anybody's at below. Where are you guys at with X-Men? Did you guys check this out? What did you think of issue number 1? Is this something where it would get you back in? I know for me and Mike, this one kind of gets us back reading it a little bit. I don't know if it's a long-term commitment. I'm not going to say I'm going to be buying it by issue 10. But certainly, I think for me, normally when I start, I try to give it the first 3 or 4 issues. And so for this one, I think certainly I'm going to buy the next 2 or 3 to kind of see how it goes. But let us know what you guys think below. As always, folks, we appreciate you watching. Hope you have a great week and God bless you.
Thanks, everybody.